Right now, your dog is likely lounging on the sofa, maybe taking a nap, or maybe he's doing that weird thing where he stares at you with total devotion, like you're the absolute center of the entire universe, and let's be honest, you probably are to him. But here's the big question we rarely ask: does he actually know he's alive? Not in the basic, breathing kind of way. Obviously, yes, lungs pumping, heart beating, tail happily wagging. We're not arguing about biology here. The question is way deeper than that. Does your dog have some sense, some internal flicker, some tiny spark telling him he exists, that there is a real experience of being him, that the world he experiences is his own private reality? Because let's face it, we assume the answer is yes. We project human feelings onto our pets constantly. We baby talk to them, buy them birthday treats, and even throw funerals for goldfish. Seriously, people actually do that, and we act like they comprehend what is going on. But what if we're totally wrong? What if your dog, your cat, your parrot, or your fish, what if they are actually just incredibly convincing biological machines with absolutely no inner life whatsoever? But then, what if we're right? What if there is someone in there, peering out from behind those eyes, feeling something real that we just cannot fully know? That's the rabbit hole we're going down today. And yes, we will definitely talk about actual rabbits too. Let's start right at the beginning. What does it even mean to know you're alive? Philosophers have been debating this for centuries, which is basically their way of admitting they do not actually know the answers, but they would love being paid to sit and think about it. Fair enough, because this puzzle is honestly one of the absolute toughest puzzles in all of science and philosophy. We call it the mind-bending problem of consciousness. Consciousness, at its very core, boils down to, is there something it actually feels like to be you? When you look at the color red, there is a redness to it, not just a light wavelength, and not just neurons firing. There is a real experience of that red. That is what philosophers call qualia, the unique, subjective, felt quality of any given experience. You feel hungry, you feel freezing cold, you feel that very specific kind of soul-crushing disappointment when you open up the fridge and discover the leftover pizza you were craving all day has vanished. Now tell me, does your cat feel that same heartbreak? It is not a silly question to ask, because from the outside, a creature with rich inner experiences and another that simply acts as though it has inner experiences look completely identical on the surface. This is what thinkers call the classic problem of other minds. After all, you cannot climb inside someone else's head. You cannot prove that anyone else is truly conscious. We all just sort of assume they do because they look like us and they act like us. So it seems pretty reasonable. But animals do not look anything like us, and that is where it gets tricky. For most of scientific history, the official stance of mainstream science was that animals do not truly feel anything. Sure, they respond to stimuli and they behave, but there is no inner life, no real feelings, no awareness, just biological machinery running its coded programming. This perspective was shaped heavily by famous French philosopher named Descartes, who, back in the 1600s, argued that animals were basically just complex automatons, glorified biological robots, the squealing of a pig when it was hurt, not pain, just pure mechanics, like the ticking of a clock, ticking. But hey, let us be fair to Descartes. The man did not have the help of modern brain science. He was completely clueless about neurons or nervous systems and brain pathways. He was just getting by with what he had. Still, and I mean this with total respect for one of history's greatest minds, that is, one of the most wildly incorrect takes in scientific history, pigs absolutely feel pain. It is incredibly obvious they do. Anyone who has hung out for 10 minutes with a pig knows that they are highly intelligent, emotionally complex creatures who build deep bonds, get anxious, and get bored or excited, and they are 100% not clocks. But that Cartesian mindset lingered in science for hundreds of years. This belief that animals were basic stimulus response machines made studying their consciousness feel unscientific. Even simple words were treated with suspicion. You had to say behavior, never emotion, aversive, stimulus, not pain, appetite, not hunger. It was a massive linguistic shield designed to erase the inner lives of other creatures that slowly started shifting in the 20th century. Very painfully slowly, but things changed. In 1970, a psychologist named Gordon Gallup Jr. did something seemingly simple, yet it ended up being completely revolutionary. He gave some chimpanzees a mirror. Usually, when animals see their reflection, they act like they are spotting a stranger. Dogs bark at the glass, cats puff up, birds attack their own reflection. They think an intruder is standing there, and they have to fight. But chimps, after just a couple of days, they started doing something different. They actually used the mirror to examine areas of their own bodies they could never normally see. They would their teeth and backsides. Gallup then placed a small, odorless, colored mark right on the chimps' foreheads while they slept. Once they woke up and saw themselves in the reflection, they reached right up to touch their own face, not the mirror, but their actual face. They recognized themselves. This was known as the mirror self-recognition test, or the MSR test, long considered the absolute gold standard for measuring animal self-awareness, because to recognize yourself in a mirror, you have to have some concept of self. You have to understand that reflection in the glass is really me. And if you have a concept of self, you have at least a basic form of self-awareness, which is a clear precursor to knowing you exist. So, who else actually passes? Great apes, chimps, bonobos, orangutans, and gorillas, mostly. Yes, dolphins, too. Elephants, definitely. And one that surprised everyone was magpies. Magpies, those clever little corvid birds, pass the mirror test, a bird studying its reflection and reaching to touch a mark on its own body. But dogs, interestingly, usually don't pass. But that doesn't mean they lack self-awareness. Dogs are heavily scent-focused, so a visual test might not be the right tool. It is like giving a colorblind person a color-based intelligence test, then immediately deciding they are not smart. That test is flawed for that species. But here is the key takeaway. Self-recognition, that basic form of knowing we exist as distinct entities in the world, is not just a human thing. It is found in varying degrees across many different species. The circle of things that know they exist is actually a lot wider than we thought. Now, let us go deeper, because there is a difference between recognizing yourself in that mirror and actually pondering your very own existence. Those are two very different things. When we ask if animals know they're alive, what we really mean is, do they possess a sense of their own being? Do they see the world from a first-person point of view, with some real awareness that they're the one doing the experiencing? That is where things get pretty deep. And look, I promise we will bring this back down to earth, but stay with me a moment. There is a famous essay by philosopher Thomas Nagel wrote in 1974 called, "What is it like to be a bat?" His main point of the essay is simple. Bats use echolocation. They map their surroundings with sonar, bouncing sound waves off objects to paint a mental picture. But Nagel argues that we could understand every single biological fact about that brains, their neurons, and so on, mapping out their entire nervous system. Yet we still cannot grasp the feeling of being a bat. That inner subjective experience cannot be reduced to physical descriptions. How does it actually feel from the inside? Living in a world of echoes, we truly have no clue. That is the hard problem of consciousness. Even if we can describe the mechanics, we cannot access their actual experience. This applies to every living creature, not just bats. What is it like to be a dog, experiencing the world mostly through scent? What is it like to be an octopus, with neurons spread out across all 8 arms, each arm making its own decisions? What is it like to be a bee, steering by the polarization of sunlight, sharing highly detailed spatial details through dance. We do not know. Science can map the behavior. Philosophy can raise the questions, but the actual inner world, locked away, totally out of reach, maybe forever. And I find that incredibly frustrating, but also strangely beautiful. Let's talk about elephants for a minute, because they are exactly the kind of creatures that make it tough to keep up that mindless biological machine theory. See, elephants actually mourn their dead. Researchers have documented this repeatedly. When a member of a herd passes away, the others will often gather around the body. They will touch it gently with their trunks for hours, sometimes even days. They will return to that very spot long after the remains are gone, just standing there, as if remembering. Now, what is actually happening inside their minds during those quiet moments, we cannot say for sure, but here is what we do know. They have massive brains compared to their actual physical size, alongside a highly developed limbic system, which is the brain region wired for deep emotions. They build lifelong social bonds and remember companions they have not seen for years. They truly seem to feel grief, and if you feel real, raw grief, not just some automated mechanical glitch, then you realize deep down that something precious has been lost, that a presence which was once there is gone. It means you recognize the line between life and death, which means, on some level, you grasp what existence really is. Now, let's jump to the opposite end of the scale. Since we have been discussing chimps, dolphins, and elephants, the usual suspects, but what about the creatures that are completely unlike us in every way? Like fish, for example. For decades, the scientific consensus was clear. Fish do not feel actual pain. Sure, they react to dangerous triggers, but that is just a reflex, no real suffering. This idea was incredibly convenient for the seafood industry, but completely wrong. Research over the last 20 years has shattered this. Fish actually have nociceptors, the sensory neurons designed to detect potentially harmful threats. They also have opioid receptors, which means they actually react to pain-killing medications the exact same way mammals do. When trapped in uncomfortable situations, they show clear physical stress responses. Some fish have even passed versions of the mirror test, or at least reacted to their reflections in ways that suggest a level of self-awareness that shocked researchers. The cleaner wrasse, a tiny tropical fish, was studied for its how it reacts to the mirror. Some scientists observed that these wrasses showed clear signs of true self-recognition. Now, the scientific community is still fiercely debating this. Healthy debate is how science actually progresses, but the very fact that we are even debating this means we have come a very long way from assuming fish are just swimming plants we ignore. Then we have insects, specifically bees. These little guys show something that resembles a dark pessimism when they get stressed. If you subject them to a really stressful experience, then present a confusing, mysterious stimulus, something that could be a sweet reward or not, those stressed bees rarely want to check it out. They naturally expect the worst. We consider this a sign of negative emotions in mammals. To see this in tiny bees is, to put it mildly, quite a lot to process. What is more, bees seem to actually play. Young bumblebees, when given a few tiny wooden balls, will roll them repeatedly, with zero snacks, no food reward at all, just rolling those balls for pure fun, seemingly. Actually, playing is usually linked to sentient, feeling creatures. It implies genuine enjoyment. It proves a real, subjective experience of having actual fun. Imagine a bumblebee playing with a little wooden ball just because loves it. Honestly, that is adorable, and quite frankly, mind-boggling. So, where does that leave us? What can we truly conclude? Here is the honest truth. The scientific and philosophical perspective has shifted massively over recent decades. In 2012, a group of top brain scientists signed what we call the Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness. Their big takeaway was simple. The brain machinery needed for conscious moments is not unique to us. A massive range of other animals, all mammals, all birds, and even wild invertebrates like octopuses, have the internal hardware for conscious experience, not just if we squint, that physical machinery, the hardware for consciousness, is built into countless animals. Now, that does not mean they feel things exactly how humans do. Consciousness almost certainly runs on a spectrum. A chimp's inner world is likely far richer and more detailed than a goldfish's. A dog's sense of self is likely different from a dolphin's. An octopus's view of the world is probably so bizarre to us that we cannot even imagine it. 3/5 of its brainpower is in its arms, not its head. It might experience this world in -1 separate streams, with each arm thinking on its own. What does that actually feel like? Honestly, we still do not know, but here is what we can say this with genuine certainty. Animals feel things, they have experiences, they navigate a world, has ups and downs, good things, bad things, things they want to chase, and things they flee. They have preferences, they bond with others, they suffer. Some of them love playing. In some incredible cases, they recognize themselves in the mirror, they mourn, they remember, they dream. Yes, animals actually dream. Your sleeping dog twitching those running paws is incredibly cute, but also scientifically important. But does all of this mean they realize they are alive? I think it depends on how you define knowing. If you mean, do they have a deep, thoughtful understanding of their own existence? Do they stay up at night thinking, I am a creature in this world and one day I will die, so what is the point? Then, probably not. Honestly, most of them do not. Maybe the great apes catch a quick glimpse of that. Maybe elephants standing quietly over their fallen feel the edges of that very feeling, but clear, conscious existential awareness. Well, that seems to be a uniquely human thing. And honestly, looking at how we cope with therapy, deep existential dread, and junk food, maybe it is not exactly a blessing. But if you mean, do they have direct, personal experience of being alive? Is there an actual feeling to being them? Then, yes, I believe the answer for so many different kinds of animals is almost surely yes. There is someone in there, looking out, feeling the world, even if we can never truly understand what. And I believe that matters incredibly, because here is the uneasy truth that this entire conversation has been pointing toward. If animals are conscious, if they truly experience their then how we choose to treat them is a moral question of massive importance. Factory farms, brutal animal testing, habitat destruction, that casual, unthinking cruelty we have historically gotten away with by convincing ourselves they do not really feel anything, but they actually do. Evolutionary science proves it, and we are only now, as a civilization, beginning to wrestle with what that means. This does not mean every animal is morally equal to a human. Nobody is saying that. These ethical dilemmas are complicated, and context always matters, but it means that when a creature suffers, that suffering is absolutely real, not just a physical reflex or basic mechanism. There is a conscious subject experiencing that pain, and that changes everything. Or it should. But let us bring this back to your dog on the couch. He has no concept of years, nor does he care about your job. He understands nothing of mortgages or global politics or even the weekend. He cannot explain what he is thinking. He will never draft a philosophy paper. But the moment you walk through that door, something shifts deep inside him, something that feels, on the inside, like joy. When he curls up next to you, there is a genuine feeling of comfort. When he is sick, something that feels like misery. When he loses someone he loves, because yes, dogs actually grieve something that feels like profound loss. He lives entirely in the present moment, which, honestly, sounds amazing, and I am a little jealous. He does not contemplate his own mortality. He never lies awake at night, wondering if his life has a purpose. He never asks, do I know I am alive? Because asking deep questions like that requires a special kind of self-awareness that seems to be uniquely human. But He is alive, he feels the rich warmth of a sunny spot on the floor, he knows the scent of his favorite human, he knows how it feels when something is totally wrong or when life is great. There is a real soul looking out through those deep brown eyes. Maybe that is enough. The question, do animals know they are alive? Well, that is less a question about wildlife and much more a query about what self-awareness really is. It is a deep consciousness, really, about the raw nature of experience, about that hard problem that thinkers and brilliant scientists have spent generations wrestling with and still cannot solve. But here is what we do know. This world is packed with creatures who experience it, who feel existence in one way or another, who are, in their own unique ways alive, not just biologically, but and we should be careful with this word. I am going to use it experientially. They are having vivid experiences, their lives feel like something real from the inside, and we are only now starting to understand how massive that circle actually is, which makes our universe, if you pause to sit with this thought for a second, pretty extraordinary. Picture a bumblebee rolling a wooden toe at that elephant standing at the exact spot where it lost someone, that magpie staring at its own reflection, that family dog sighing on your couch, content, dreaming of something, chasing ghosts, maybe, paws twitching, all of them, in their unique way, present, all of them, in their own way, alive in a way we can feel, but never fully see. That is either deeply comforting or deeply unsettling, maybe both. That is where the absolute best questions leave us.